Yeah, so the 5 disciplines that we work at the side games are mind sight, remote viewing, psychokinesis or telekinesis / telekinesis, dowsing, and precognition. I'm watching the trends of what's happening in our own space, and
Yeah.
I've been sharing with my partner these robots and how robots are advancing, and then Gemini 3 came out the other day, and a friend did a demonstration for me of what it could do. And that thing is going to take a lot of jobs. There are dark things that have happened out there, and that are happening out there. But then there are also good people who are trying to do good things. The hardest part is the discernment, and then also to not try to categorize every person as a bad guy just because of what they've done in the past or what knowledge they have.
All right. Greetings, humans. Welcome to Mike and Dave's Multiverse, where we surf the cosmic waves of the unknown. This week, take the red pill from the Black MacGyver himself, Hakim Isler, combat vet, ninja master, and psychic pioneer. Buckle in, explorers of the extraordinary, as your host, Dave, dives deep with Hakim into his high-stakes military journey from elite special operations and PSYOPs to survival mastery and his epic pivot to TV stardom, which is where I first saw him, but didn't realize it until Contact in the Desert, which we're going to get into as well. So from battlefield grit to unlocking hidden human potentials, we're going to explore his mind-expanding odyssey. I'm super excited to welcome Hakim Isler to the Multiverse, man. Thanks for joining the Multiverse.
Thank you, brother. That was the best intro I have ever had.
Yes. Cool.
I'm gonna hire you as my hype guy or something.
Thank you. I'll follow you around to shit and I'll just hype you up. Yeah. No, I'm excited to talk to you, and I've been really working on that as part of my game for the show. So I really appreciate the feedback. So let me give you a little bit of like how this came about for me. I saw you in your it's your speech on Cynetics 101 at Contact in the Desert. But since then, I've been to like a couple different conferences. It's been a while, and but since I saw that, I was like, I got to talk to this guy. So I look you up. I realized, your background in martial arts, your military experience. You and I have a lot in common. I have a background in martial arts, not quite as extensive as you, and I was also a medic in the U.S. Army for 8 years. And so I just really thought you had a lot of we could have a great conversation, but really I want to tell your story, man. So starting with let's start at more of the present, and then I'll take us back to the past, because I didn't even know what Cynetics was going into Contact in the Desert. I was showing up as sort of, I always wanted to go to one of UFO conference, right? And then they're sitting there in your speech, and it was very mind expanding for me. And so I've been kind of going down that rabbit hole since then. And so can you tell us, a little bit about what Cynetics is and your most recent event, the Cy Games, I think it was called?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, as I was on this journey of understanding Psi and delivering it in a way that made sense for our modern day, um, at the time, psionics had come out as the psionic assets. Jake Barber made that popular again.
Yes.
When he came out. And one of the challenges is that we are in a new time a new evolution, a new understanding of our
Mm.
psi abilities. And to use terms from the past means that you carry the baggage of those terms.
Yes.
Right. And so, not that psionics is wrong, not that psychotronics is wrong. It's just that these things carry a bunch of weight,
Mm.
sometimes tied to government organizations, sometimes tied to fantasy.
Corruptness
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
yeah. And so, therefore, it's like, okay, if we want to really bring in and usher in a new age of psi potential and
Mm-hmm.
psi understanding,
Mm-hmm.
then taking words that that are from the past that may have negative baggage with them, it's probably not the best thing for us,
So
because energy carries in a name, right?
it's a bit of a
um
rebrand, right?
yeah. And so instead, let's just come up with a term that really makes sense for us in this modern day, that
Mm-hmm.
also, and it was very important for me to weave in ethics into whatever
Mm-hmm.
definition of whatever word that was created. And so that's where cynetics came in, was that, okay, I'm going to create a word that focuses on the full spectrum of psi abilities, but then also incorporated in that, in the development of the word itself, is this idea of ethics and ethical use of
Mm.
these abilities.
Yeah, you said a lot of great things here, especially, first of all, evolving, the words to go with the time and the new understanding of, our abilities and these ideas. And then I was going to ask, because this is always, I'm a social worker by trade, and ethical consideration is part of everything we do. And so I always think about that, like, in a time where we're seeing these evolving abilities and also technologies that could potentially augment them, ethics is a super important part of that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And that's, if we look at an age in which we're saying everybody has these potentials, we feel like people's lives could be better with these potentials and bringing out these potentials, then we also have to think about the balance of this and say to ourselves, well, we also need to understand that there are negative aspects to these potentials, and that
Mm-hmm.
when people come to these potentials, if they have, you know, maybe trauma in their background, or some
Mm-hmm.
other type of thing that creates a lot of turmoil, then it could these potentials could be used in a harmful way. And so, what does it look like to have a society where many people are tapping into these abilities? Well, it doesn't feel right to also say that everybody needs to join like a monastery or
Right.
a yoga ashram and then learn about the 8 limbs of yoga, because not everybody's going to do that neither. But people are manifesting these abilities, and what we see is that children are coming into the world with these already intact.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Mm-hmm.
we have two choices: either we say that you're wrong, this is bad, this is witchcraft, don't do it, or we say, let's give you, like we do with most things, let's give you guidance and mentorship and help
Mm.
you understand how to do these things in an ethical way. So when you have a child, which I have a daughter who's about to be 1 year old next week, when she starts speaking and when she starts picking things up more and using tools, I could say, hey, don't do that, because there's a potential that you can use these wrong. Or I could say, hey, here's how you use them in a positive way.
Mm.
Here's how you use your words in a positive way that heals and helps. Here's how you use your actions in a positive way that heals and
Mm-hmm.
helps. Or
Mm-hmm.
I could just say, do it wrong and teach her to do it wrong in a
Mm-hmm.
way that's going to hurt people. Or I could just pretend that it doesn't exist and that she's not really developing these things and say, oh, stop doing that. That's wrong. That's bad, whatever.
Right.
So I choose the beginning one, the first one, which is the idea that, hey, let's give some guidance and some mentorship in a positive way to help people with this. And so that discussion has to happen about ethics if we really truly want to bring this forward in a way that is helpful to society.
Yeah, I agree. And so when I saw you at Contact in the Desert, I started thinking about these things. But I looked you up, and that's when I was like, "Oh, he was on Naked and Afraid too." That's where I've seen. I hadn't made that connection. but I was really interested in this stuff, and it took me down the rabbit hole. And I ended up. Do you know Dahlia? She was on Joe Rogan. I
Yes.
think she was at your recent Games event as well, possibly.
Yeah,
I
so
don't know.
Dahlia hasn't been on Joe Rogan, but she's been on
Oh, sorry,
Daniel
Danny
Jones.
Jones. My
Yeah,
bad, Danny
yeah.
Jones. I saw her on Danny Jones, yeah,
Hmm.
recently, and so
Yeah.
I actually booked her too. She's coming on tomorrow because I'm really interested in this. But she's one of the pioneers of like sort of putting herself out there and navigating, these waters publicly, and learning how to teach, and learn herself how to communicate with her child with these abilities. And so how do you feel about her and like her role and like pushing, or people like her at the beginning of this and pushing, this sort of evolution of our consciousness forward?
Yeah, so Dahlia and I are really good friends, and actually, I had asked her to be a part of my panel at Contact in the Desert, which
Okay.
is where she was kind of discovered in this really major way. And the idea that she and I talked about when this came up was that, there is going to be a lot of popularity, but then also negativity that comes with you putting yourself out there and putting
Mm-hmm.
your daughter out there.
Right.
And I think she's a saint in her own
Yeah.
way because she was willing to take that on to see the field flourish and to grow. And since then, she's just been doing such amazing work and putting herself out there. And one of the things that I found that's really disheartening to some degree is that there's been people in our own community. So people will talk about aliens and this and that
Mm-hmm.
and all the
Mm-hmm.
experiences they have. And then you have this person who comes forward and they can do this really incredible thing.
Yeah.
And then those same people are quick to say, oh, that's fake,
Right.
But let me tell you about Bigfoot
Yeah.
and
Right.
how he visits me every day. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool. But let me show you Dahlia, who can really do this thing in front. Oh no, that's fake. She's looking around the mask somehow. I can't figure it out. But I really want to tell you about how this alien visits me in my bathroom every night. And it's like, okay, got it. Like I want to support you, but also I would love to see that you at least give her a shot. This woman who's coming out, putting herself and her daughter on the line,
Well,
and not just trying to throw her under the bus just because it doesn't fit your paradigm.
Well, yeah, and that's the first thing I thought because that episode got a lot of views, and I'm thinking she's putting this out there, and like that takes bravery. And so for people who don't know exactly, but maybe don't know specifically what we're talking about, what kind of abilities are we talking about? And within Dahlia and her daughter, but then also just within what you noticed with your work, like what kind of abilities are we talking about here?
Yeah, so Dahlia, one of her primary abilities in which she's like really gone viral with is mind sight, this ability to
Mm-hmm.
see without your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and that's something that's been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
There's a movie out on Netflix called Henry Sugar, the magnificent tale or story of Henry Sugar, and it talks about this guy who studied this yoga practice and was able to break through and have this ability as well. And then her daughter is telepathic. They
Mm-hmm.
both have multiple talents,
Mm-hmm.
but these are the ones that they're known for. And her daughter share information telepathically from mind to mind.
Is
And
it is
so
it just it's just they go back and forth, or it's just from daughter to mother?
So primarily, if you talk to Dahlia, Lidu, which is her daughter's name,
Mm-hmm.
is primarily the sender and
Okay.
receiver.
All right.
Dahlia can do a little bit of it from what she has been saying that Lidu has kind of been helping her grow in
Right.
that particular way. So those are the two potentials and the two psi abilities that they
They
express the
have.
most. But Dahlia's been working with psychokinesis a little bit and telekinesis. There's other things that she does as well that she does really well. And again, it's cool. We have a lot happening right now that's coming
Yeah.
out in the world.
Yeah. So are there any other type of abilities that you've observed in or demonstrated, like in sort of besides telepathy and then the mind sight?
Yeah, so the five disciplines that we work at the Psi Games are mind sight, remote viewing, psychokinesis or telekinesis / telekinesis,
Mm-hmm.
dowsing, and
Mm-hmm.
precognition. And
Okay.
so your ability to see the future. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I found, and this is why I chose these 5 disciplines, was
Mm-hmm.
because they kind of work off the same mechanism, right?
Uh-huh.
So, it's kind of very similar principles. And what I like to equate it to is, you know, um, let's say handball, baseball, basketball,
Mm-hmm.
this idea of using my arm and my hand to
Ah,
throw something in the air and
yes.
calculate that that thing lands somewhere that I'm looking at. So if I'm using a handball, I got to hit the ball and have it go in a certain direction and hit in a certain area and move. So that takes very similar processes as if I'm in baseball and I'm throwing a ball to a
Yep.
catcher somewhere, or basketball and I'm shooting a ball to the hoop somewhere, so they're different games, but the underlying mechanisms to make those things possible in the human body and mind are kind of similar. And so the same with this, like remote viewing, mind sight, dowsing, precognition, and psychokinesis, they all have an underlying similarity in your desire or your understanding of intention, attention, your ability to move your attention and intention to different places for different focuses. And so that's kind of why we chose that. So those are some of the abilities that we work on, or the psi abilities. But telepathy is going to be one that we do in the future. It's not one that we're doing right this moment, because at times it can be a little convoluted and tough to have it as a competition on a stage where people can do it in a very clean and concise way that we can like score and everybody understands what's going on and it's
Right.
not losing people.
Right. Yeah, that was an excellent explanation. And just shout out to Dahlia and her bravery and, putting this stuff to the test. And I suspect more people like will start coming forward, hopefully, with her abilities that we can see, and just expand human potential. So you mentioned intention, attention, mind's eye, and different focuses. It makes me think of this is probably really a baseline version of what we're talking about, but I like these kind of analogies. But those pictures where you zone in or you zone out, and you can see different pictures. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's much like training that ability. Am I close?
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's a pretty decent way to say it, because you're still using the eyes, you're still using your attention.
Mm-hmm.
I would think of that, like even using that to explain like local awareness versus non-local awareness. So mind
Mm-hmm.
sight tends to be intuitive local awareness, meaning that I either it's real time, which means that I can see exactly what's happening in the room right now in my local environment, or it's intuitive, meaning I can't actually see it, but I just know what's going on. So if you're saying, what do I have in my hand? And I'm like, it's an apple. And you're like, whoa, do you see that? And I'm like, no, I don't actually see it. And then it's like, how do you know? I don't know. I just know. So that would be like local awareness.
Mm.
Non-local awareness is like a remote viewing where I have a knowing of something that's not in my local vicinity. So it's like a state away or 2 states away or a country away, and somebody's doing something and I'm like, oh, I can feel like this thing is red and it feels circular and it feels like natural, and then you keep going down the line, and all of a sudden you get this what we call analytical overlay, and you're like, it's like an apple, and the person's like, yes, it is an apple, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I don't know, I just feel it. And so
Yeah.
that would be a non-local awareness, or even a clairvoyant. Maybe I see it. I actually do see it. So it's not like I'm getting perceptions like a remote viewing, but I actually see what the thing is. And I'm like, it's an apple. And you're like, well, how do you know that this person's holding an apple stayed away? And you're like, I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
just know. So you're saying that I have this photo and it's kind of all of these patterns, and if I look close, I see a turtle, and when I back up, I see a basketball, and so
Mm-hmm. Right.
one is the close one would probably be like my local awareness, and the far one would be like my non-local or my distant awareness.
That makes a lot of sense when if you think about like vision, and like when that's why people have bifocals and stuff like that, right? So that makes sense in my head. So you mentioned that sports analogy, which I really liked, because I'm an athlete, and that's the best way. That was the best way anyone's ever explained that to me, because it's a mechanism we developed evolutionarily, to throw stuff for hunting and whatnot. And so how do you feel? What do you feel like is the evolutionary mechanism? Like, what do you like? Why are we where I know that some of these abilities have existed for a long time, but it feels and seems like to me that there's some kind of mechanism happening that's increasing this ability. Or do you think it's just we're becoming more connected, and so we're able to talk about it more?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening now. That's there's ideas, and so some of the ideas and some of the things that I've heard is that we're shifting as a species, and that something's coming that's going to be really big, and it requires us to kind of evolve in this particular way, and therefore there's a lot of youth coming into the world with these abilities, and there's a greater awareness of these abilities. There is a belief that at one point in time that we did, many of us had these abilities, for instance, telepathy.
Right.
Maybe this idea of, Babel, and, where we all spoke one language. And maybe that wasn't like actual language. Maybe it was just we all were in each other's head and we can understand.
Makes
And
more
that,
sense.
yeah, and that as a collective made us very efficient. And then something or somehow we ended up forming these actual words, and that kind of diminished that idea, because there's so many really interesting stories. Another one coming out more now too is this idea when you would talk to indigenous people, like the people who create or made ayahuasca. They would say, well, how did you know? I mean, if we were to take this in a lab, there's going to be multiple experiments, and we
Right.
got to break it down, and we got
Right.
to figure out what the molecules are and all this stuff. And then, after maybe a couple years, we'd come up with this idea of this thing that can take you on this journey. And these people are like, yeah, the plants told us. And then we thought, oh, okay, well, that's crazy, and now we're like, but when you really examine it, you're like, well, what are the chances that they would just stumble upon this
Yeah.
actual process that makes this thing that we are using today, taking people on this journey and giving them these awakenings? Maybe the plant did tell them, and now we're learning that plants are sentient. So, um, there's this idea that maybe these things existed all along. And then there's another idea that maybe some group or faction came along and said, it's really hard to control people if they can like communicate with each other and they know all our nefarious ideas. And so
Yeah.
maybe the great deception is that we make them believe that they can't do these things, or if they can, or that if these things are possible, it's only a few, and those few are going to be in our inner circle. And as long as we sign off on those few people, then that's cool. And anybody outside of that inner circle who can do this, we need to kill them or label them as, crazy or a
Yeah.
charlatan or something like that.
That's it.
But in that way we can maintain control. And me as an ex-PSYOP guy, that makes a lot of sense for me. That maybe we all had these capabilities, but through societal, uh, grouping and societal rule setting, we created a space where we wanted to break that out of the everyday and only give it to a certain few, give that power to a certain few, and we call them special. And
Mm.
so whereas
Mm.
we all have this potential, which we're finding now, but it just means that we have different levels of that potential. Everybody can shoot a basketball as long as you have two arms, and two hands. And sometimes even people in like the Special Olympics are doing stuff that is amazing. They don't have any arms, but they're still like shooting
Right.
basketballs and doing
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah.
amazing stuff,
Yeah.
And so
It's true.
many people could shoot a ball. But is everybody a Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Larry Bird or whoever else is really cool out there?
You're obviously around the same age as me, just by the dudes you listed off. But yeah, I often use that metaphor. for stuff like this that's difficult to conceptualize or measure,
Mhm.
and the intangible type stuff, for like, because not everyone's born Michael Jordan, right? Of anything, right? And we all exist on a spectrum of various, abilities and different things like that. So I think that's a good way to put it. Have either of you guys seen this show on Apple TV called Pluribus? 'Cause
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
that's
I've
what you
been
made me
watching it.
think of when we're talking about, sort of what would happen if these abilities were suddenly activated within us and we all could hear everything each other was saying and thinking. Would we be more peaceful, and would we become more efficient? And then what does that mean about our humanity, which is like where the ethics comes into play, right? Because this woman literally is waiting for them to steal her, what she feels is her sense of individuality way. So we've got you've got an interesting future laid ahead of us. You mentioned that, Hakeem, that something could be coming, that is part of this awakening, for lack of better, all these people being born with these abilities. Do you think that something could be technological, biological, a combination of the two? What do you think?
Oh, that's a great question. I have no clue.
Me
I'm
neither.
watching the trends of what's happening in our own space, and
Yeah.
I've been sharing with my partner these robots and how robots are advancing, and then Gemini 3 came out the other day, and a friend did a demonstration for me of what it could do, and that thing is gonna take a lot of jobs,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it's doing thing. I mean, like, this person's a game developer, and they
Mhm.
literally on the phone with me created a game in less than 10 minutes.
An awesome
And
game too, probably.
yeah, and it was awesome. And I was
Yeah.
just like, whoa. And
Yeah.
he was like, Hakeem, this used to take us like a couple months and a lot of money to do, and we just did it in under 10 minutes. And I was just like, that is amazing, and so there's a lot happening. And then when you talk about adding this onto robotics, this AI onto robotics. And so here's what I think is happening. I think this is just a crazy, crazy conspiracy theory, but
Let
I
it
think
fly. That's where this place. We're in the multiverse, brother. Let's go.
I think anybody who pays attention to these things will start to say, maybe Hakeem had a point. Um, if you look at Star Wars and you see all of the things that are happening in Star Wars, and you say, well, if all the things we're saying is maybe possible right now, and overlay the two, you
Hmm.
start really coming up with some parallels that are mind blowing.
Yeah.
One, multiple species of non human intelligences, right? You have these councils, you got all this stuff. Multiple galaxies, we got that. These guys use a currency that you can use anywhere at any time, all over in any galaxy. They call it credits. We
Yeah.
have digital currency.
Yep.
You have the force, consciousness. You have people who can use the force. People who are learning how to use this in a positive way. We would call those the Jedi, who are diplomats who learn about how people operate and stuff like that. People who can use the force in negative ways.
Hmm.
We're hearing a lot of talk about different organizations using trauma and fear as a means to bring these things forward. Robotics,
Hmm.
robotics that have intelligence, high levels of intelligence.
Hmm.
You got robots and humans, or robots and biological beings that are meshed together. That's
Yes.
also in Star Wars, right? So I
Yep.
mean, like, literally, then you got all these like planes and stuff that can fly faster than the speed of
Oh,
sound
drones
and
and
everything
stuff.
else,
Yeah.
and drones. So I mean, like, if you really start to watch that, you say to yourself, holy smokes, like,
Uh,
Star Wars is real. Then another one is Stargate SG-1.
One of my all-time faves.
Oh my gosh,
Shout
yeah.
out to the original MacGyver. But yeah, yes,
Yeah.
similar. Yeah, you're right.
Yes. So these guys have multiple species. Some want to help, some aren't so nice. Multiple planets, multiple abilities. Some of it's technology that is being passed off as some sort of power. Some
Yeah.
of it is actual powers that people
Yes.
have. I mean, like, it's this, I mean, we are living that. And one can't help but to think, was either were those people tapped in, meaning that they were precogging the future, some on some deep level because they were being very creative? Where did they influence the future because of their own creative spark? So they kind of mused that into existence
Yeah.
just by creating these things.
Yeah.
Are they some sort of hybrid that maybe is a part of like some group, or
Hmm.
maybe they're a part of an organization that was given that information to write it out as a story so that it could start changing slowly over time, the zeitgeist, so it's not as impactful or overwhelming to the human population when we do start finding this out, because we've been watching these stories for years and years and years. I don't
Yeah.
know, but there's a lot of levels of intrigue when it comes down to where we are, where we might be going, and then what these stories have kind of told us over the last few years.
Yeah, man. I try to tell this. I think about this all day. So thank you so much for your talking to you is very validating for me. I'm looking around, going, guys, this is Star Wars, bro. Did you see that? And people, they're. It's because, and it's not. I think it's because we live our lives. Me too. I'm not special. Like, in an 80 to 100-year time capsule, that's very hard to conceptualize, like the past and the present, or the future and in the past. I mean, on a day-to-day basis for a lot of people. I don't know why I would just like always thought about that. Maybe it's because I was introduced to things like the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars at a super young age, but weren't we all? And I wanted to say, Akeem, so what you're describing was also described in fantasy, like the Lord of the Rings. Multiple species living on multiple planets with multiple technologies. They called magic, right? And so it's the same concept, just going back in time. And we're coming to find out right now. Part of what we talk about on our show is lost ancient civilizations, which I highly recommend coming to Contact in the Desert or something like Quest for Ancient Civilization Conference. I think you'd really enjoy it. But it's the same idea, just in reverse. And so we had at one time we knew that these abilities existed, and we were able to use them in an efficient way at an earlier stage in our development. So
Mhm.
I think it's going to be interesting as the future moves forward, and we're going so quickly. Like you mentioned, you can make a video game in 10 minutes that it used to take a whole production team 10 years. It makes me wonder, do you ever play Skyrim?
I
Like,
have not played Skyrim, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
okay, it's probably one of the best games of all time. Some people hate on me for saying it, but it's because you can basically exist in it for like ever. And they've been working on the new one, the new Elder Scrolls game, for like years. And it makes me wonder, that you're going to just be able to exist in there for multiple lifetimes. So to bring this back full circle, I love how you guys are teaching ethics in your courses, because that's going to be a super important part of it, especially as this starts getting people trying to monetize this stuff and all kinds of things, because the future's coming, and it's coming fast, Akeem.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely. And people are afraid of AI, and people are afraid of robotics,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I want to help usher in is like, yeah, there might be some things to be worried about there, but one of the ways that we can really stop worrying, and this comes from my survival background, is through preparation, through what we can do. And so what we can do is we haven't even tapped into the full, like, we haven't even tapped into 40 or 50% of what our capabilities are as multidimensional beings. So if we start tapping into that more, then maybe it doesn't get so scary. And so I use this analogy, and I tell people, and sometimes, in the consciousness field, because I'm a survivalist guy and a martial artist and I have this military background, people will like think that I'm being in somewhat aggressive or negative when I say this. And I say, I have this saying, I say, the best thing I can do is just sharpen my knife. And they're like, well, what does
Mm.
that mean? And I'm like, well, a knife in old survival was this very important tool, right? Like, it could be used to cut rope or help you, do all types of different work, right? And so, a matter of fact, some people just do one knife survival class where they just go out into the woods and just survive with just the knife. Right. So the worst case scenario of you using your knife is actually to defend yourself, right? Like you never want to do that because that means like something's attacking you and is trying to hurt you. That's not even on your radar. But first you're building shelters with it. You're creating cordage, you're able to process food, you're able to do all these really things, awesome things. But the one thing that knife needs to be is sharp,
Mm, yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know what when you're in a true survival scenario, you don't know what could come your way.
Mm-hmm.
It could be another just boring day where you're just collecting firewood and like, getting some food, or it could be like a
You break your
totally
leg.
destructive day, break your leg. Yeah, now you have to like make a splint for yourself
Mm-hmm.
um or something attacks you and you have
Knock
to
on
defend
wood.
yourself. But the one thing that's constant in all of those things is that your knife has to be sharp. So we can't say what negative aliens or positive aliens or whatever is out there, or is AI going to try to kill us all, like, but what you can do is you can sharpen your blade, which is your spirit. You can sharpen that to the best of your ability for positive light. And then worst case scenario of all time is that you actually have to use it to keep yourself alive, to defend yourself and to defend your family. But at least it's sharp. At least you're at the pinnacle of what you can be, because
Well,
that's what you're going to need.
the samurais had this figured out, and that was the whole idea. Prepare for have your sword super sharp when you need it, and avoid that if at all possible. And I think that, like, I keep making this past future correlation, but I really love what you just said there, which is essentially ancient principle. You keep your sword sharp while we're waiting to see what happened, because even 2,000 years ago, your technologies and wars and things like that being introduced would probably created a similar sense of like, whoa, like what's the future look like? Well, guess what? We don't know. Well, hope maybe sometime soon, or there'll be people on Earth who can know. There's one question I got to circle back before we get into like how you got started and all this. But what is dowsing? I never heard of that before. If I did, what's dowsing?
Yeah, so dowsing is your ability to find like things like water or any type of object
Oh,
underground
okay, yeah.
using like and traditionally like dowsing rods, or these metal rods, or a Y
Uh-huh.
stick or something
Right.
of that nature, and you're looking for water in the ground. But really dowsing is knowing what you're looking for but not knowing where it is, having a general
Mm-hmm.
understanding and somehow tapping in and tuning in some way that allows you to find that thing. So it's a lot like local remote or local mind sight, or sometimes people call it local intuition. But you can also do it non-locally. Like you can have a map of an area in a different place and
Mm.
use like a pendulum, or use some sort of dowsing rod or something of that nature to pinpoint on that map where you think oil or water is. And people have done that. And what I understand, they've been very successful with that for different companies. So
Mm.
yeah, there's
How
that type of
useful.
thing. Yeah, yeah. So we can tune in. I think the thing is that, everything's connected. And once you tell somehow, whatever way you do it, tell your consciousness that you're looking for a particular item or an object, then, or an energy, then your consciousness can go out there and connect with it and find it in an instance. And so that's another superpower that we have, that most people
Mhm.
just have to get beyond their own belief structure to be able to allow themselves to do that.
All right, gold, gold, gold. No, I'm just kidding. But that's the idea, technically. And who knows? Maybe some, humans with a lot that wield a lot of power, have come across other humans who can do that, and that's how they control resources. I don't know. I believe it's humans likely have been sharpening tools like this for thousands of years, right? And
Yeah.
so.
I've met people who are in high level corporations, and
Hmm.
a matter of fact, I just met somebody who worked for Google, and she is an intuitive specialist for Google. And so I was
Huh.
like, what's that? And she was like, well, they have certain decisions they want to make and things they want to do, and they come to me, and I use my ability to give them guidance, and they will take that advice and then they'll make choices. Oh, wow, they do that? Yeah, but it's not on, I'm not listed on their website or any of these things. It's still kind of a little bit under wraps. People who have done this, she said that her NDA is kind of loosely knit, so she can tell people. But there's been people in the past that I know that had signed NDAs because these big corporations just did not want them to tell anyone that they were using these kind of psi abilities as means to make decisions,
That's
because
so
the
wild.
shareholders wouldn't like it. The shareholders would be
I
like,
was
what? You putting all my money on the line with some lady or guy that's going to tell you, I have a feeling that you should dig and drill over here. And then you take my $500 million that I gave you to build the
yeah.
oil well in the spot somebody told you they had a feeling. Like, that wouldn't fly for a lot of people.
So the U.S. government's been doing that shit for a while
Mhm.
with our money, and so that suggests to me that there's something to it, especially if Google CEOs are doing it, all these hype, and it's not just like, oh, we're gonna listen to this person with these psionic abilities and just go off that. They just know that there's something to it, and so they put it all into the risk assessment. Correct?
Yeah. I think they do. I think the wisest way to use this is to not use it as a single source of information,
Correct. Yeah.
but use it as just an additional
Yep.
source of information. And so, just like the Army had human intelligence and signal intelligence and all these different types of intelligence, but then they also had this psi intelligence where they were able to um, tap into these assets, which were these remote viewers, and have them give them information, and then you could use that to cross-reference it with all their other information to come up with a clearer picture of what was going on. And
Mm.
that's, I think, what these companies are doing, and they're having success, but they don't, the average person doesn't know that. So they believe it's all woo-woo. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
these Fortune 500 companies are making bazillions of
Right.
dollars using just this technology, this
Yeah.
human technology,
Yep.
in this way for for resources. So
Human technology. I like that. Sorry, I'm making a note of that. That's great. Um, yeah, and so I think that's a good transition into. So, what it you mentioned the we brought up the military. So, what exactly did you do in the military? Was your MOS like? How did you get started in the military? Would you mind sharing with us that story? We got about 30 minutes. I kind of wanted to hear
yeah,
that story.
absolutely. So my MOS, which is military occupational specialty, which is your job basically,
Mm-hmm.
is was PSYOP, and so
Mm-hmm.
PSYOP is psychological
Yep.
operations, and that's a,
How do you get picked for that? Like, how do they?
what
Sorry,
30.
I'll let you tell it. You
Yeah,
tell.
so its identifier is called 37 Fox. And
Hmm.
and oddly enough, I was actually going to go in the Army as an 18 X-ray, which is a special forces designator to
Yeah.
become get on a special forces ODA, operational detachment alpha, and then be able to work with those guys and be like a weapons sergeant. So that was my original goal. But I trained in this ninjutsu martial arts,
Yep.
and I was actually at a bodyguard seminar. My teacher used to protect the Dalai Lama,
Hmm.
and he was doing like this compassionate bodyguarding
Hmm.
class.
Hmm.
And if you're protecting the Dalai Lama, if somebody runs up and tries to hug him, you can't just put him in a chokehold, because you got this, you're protecting this super like
Right.
holy person,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
and the person may just be super loving and just want to touch that love. They don't have any nefarious intent. So, I thought that was a great class to be a part of, because I had
Hmm.
been doing executive protection training, and it was like it was very different than what we were learning. Anyway, I meet this guy named Michael at this class, and a friend of mine, one of the instructors at the course, was like, "Hey, I know that you're going in the Army. There's this guy Michael here, and he's in the Army, and he does this thing called PSYOP, and you probably will be interested in it." I was like, "What the hell is PSYOP?"
Yeah.
And so I talked to Michael. He took me out to lunch. We sat down, and he started telling me about PSYOP, and he said, "Yeah, it is what the ninja used to do. They understood psychology. They understood how people worked. They understood how to, uh, understand narratives and understand how to develop them, understand how to break them down." And I was like, wow, okay, that sounds really cool. And then he said there was a tactical version. So I'd be like, just like out there, I'd be doing all the same things that the special forces guys were doing per se, because I'll be attached to all these special forces units.
Mm-hmm.
PSYOP is a branch of special operations. And then I have
Huh.
this other duty, which is understanding and, dealing with propaganda and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, and making sure that we do counter propaganda ops. So I was like, that sounds super fascinating. And
Yeah.
because I was cerebral and I loved the intelligence behind it, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. So I went in and I
And
I
can I just say,
reclassified.
here we've
Yeah.
got a modern scenario recruiting an ancient technique, ninjutsu, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the theme of this episode.
Yeah. And that's basically what happened. So I re up, well, I didn't re up, but I went in and I changed my designator to 37 Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went, at the time you could go in and go through the training and become PSYOP. Now they have like a full on pipeline, which is a lot harder
Okay.
for
So that was
people to
that in
go
the
through.
90s or
I
early
joined,
2000s?
yeah, it was early 2000s. So I joined in 2000. Yeah, I joined in like
Oh,
just after 9/11.
the best
So
time to
yeah,
join. I joined in
yeah,
2003. So yeah,
yeah, yeah,
best time.
yeah.
So
It was 2004 I joined. Yeah. So
got it. Got it. Okay. That's just super cool. I don't want to ask you too much about that. I'm hoping that like you like us enough to join us again. But I wanted to ask about, you know, was your as a child, were you into this type of thing? What was like? Did you enjoy science fiction because there's a lot of parallels there?
mhm.
Fantasy because there's a lot of parallels there. What was your first sort of what you would be considered paranormal experience as well? Was it in childhood or what?
Yeah,
How'd you
so
start?
that's a
How'd this
beautiful
start?
question. And yes, to that, I loved sci-fi. I loved anime, like cartoons
Mm-hmm.
that had special characters with special abilities and all
Mm-hmm.
that understanding. And so a really pivotal time for me that I can remember was when I was 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream when I believe I was 8, where I told my mom. I woke up the next morning and I told her the lottery numbers. I was like, I had a dream last night about these lottery numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and here's what they are. And she played it
Nice.
locally, but it came out nationally. So the exact numbers, I think it was like 6 numbers, which is some crazy, when we look statistically, it is super crazy to come up with 6 numbers that are going to be
Yeah.
the lottery. We would have won a bigger pot if we had played it nationally, but she
Wow.
played it locally and it didn't come out locally. And I didn't get that part of the message. It didn't say, "Hey, here's the numbers. Make sure you play it nationally." And I'm like,
They
"Dang it,
don't teach that.
it's like just half the message, like here's the numbers." And it's the lottery numbers. So that was one thing. The other thing was when I was 9, my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And she said loud and proud, like there was no doubt in my mind. I stood up and I told her, I'm going to be a ninja. And she
Mm.
said, "Oh, that was weird," and her and my aunt kind of giggled a little bit, but didn't want to like squash my dreams. So they were just like, "Oh, okay, that's cool, like good for you, And sure enough, I came back to her when I was 21 and said that there's this guy in Ohio, and he's a ninja guy, and I want to go train with him. I had forgot about the 9-year-old story,
Right.
and I'm gonna
I
go
was thinking
train
I
with
probably
him.
said that too once or twice.
Right? And she said, "Oh my God, you knew." And I said, "What? Knew what?" She was like, "When you were 9, do you remember this? When you were 9, you told me you were going to be a ninja." I was like, "No." When she was like, "Yes." And she went down and sat me down and told me the whole story. And I was just blown away by that. And I mean, the thing that I've done for the last 18, going on 19 years of my life as a career, as a business, is I've run a ninja martial arts school. At one
Hmm.
point I had 2 schools,
Hmm.
so up until recently. And so that's as exactly what I've become.
That's
So
cool. I believe it's a belief of mine that, and this is just like a personal perception, but I see it play out in my line of work as well as like doing this as well. But it's my belief that our truest version of ourselves is our childhood version, and then we can get all this, software you know, for lack of a better word, you know, installed that like takes us away from that. That's part of why I'm doing this show, is because if you asked me, you know, like what I wanted to do, like when I was 10, I would have said, I want to be a history teacher and I want to, I want to be a history teacher and I want to coach basketball. Well, right now I just started coaching basketball for the first time, and like this year, and I started this podcast last year. A lot of what we do is ancient history, so that's a big part of it for me. But I'm doing that to, you know, get back to that truer version of myself, because in the meantime, between that and like now and the new version of myself, you know, combat, you know, like life stuff that I won't even get into now because it's about you, not me. But I really do think that children play a huge role in like how we're going to study these things and how they are moving forward. That's why I think Dahlia's Child is important. How do we protect these kids, man? Because you ever seen Ender's Game? You ever read the book Ender's Game?
I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie, and all my friends who've read the books are like, you need to read the books. And I'm like, I don't have time to read those books. But
Listen it
that
in the
movie was
car.
awesome.
Listen to it in the car. But the point is, the military starts taking these kids and signing them up to fight aliens, you know, with their special cognitive abilities, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's maybe already happening in other countries across the world. You know, we
Yeah.
might be
Yeah.
doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely believe that there's that. And that's why we have to have this counterbalance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's entitled to their own agency to make their own choice. If you grow up in a family and your family decides that that's what they want to do and they want to put you in some program, I may not agree with it, but you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I may say, hey, here's another option. But I can't stop them. But
Right.
one of the things that I can do is, again, create an option, you know? And
Mm.
so that's where that's what I'm trying to do. And what we are doing with the
With the
side
side
games
games, yeah.
is like, hey, here's another option. And people have, you know, badmouthed me because they don't know me and they heard about my background. Oh, this guy is a PSYOP guy. He's just trying to steal people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, actually, I've learned those lessons of how people can use this for a negative purpose. And I'm saying to you that the way we combat that, based on what my understanding of PSYOP is that we come together as a community. People think that the safest place for them to be is as an individual locked up in their house,
Mm-hmm.
practicing these skills and having these abilities. No, that's the most vulnerable place for you to be. The
Mm-hmm.
most safest place for you to be is in a community of people who love you, who want to see you thrive. And if you go missing, they can figure out where you are, or you know, what better place to go missing, or what better example or scenario to be missing than having 1,000 friends that are psychics, right? So who
Mm-hmm.
are like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, Hakim's missing, what's going on, let's all get
Yeah.
together and figure out where he is, versus me like hiding out in my basement,
Yeah. Yeah.
or getting trapped in some, you know, we know through MK Ultra that there were different doctors and psychiatrists that were working with the US government,
Exactly.
you know, that a person would come in and they would think they're getting help, and then they were getting fed LSD and like glasses of water and then being studied unbeknownst to themselves. We know that with Tuskegee, that because the US government wanted to test syphilis, that they were injecting people they were putting on health fairs in certain neighborhoods, and people would come for those health fairs, and then they would inject them with syphilis and then pretend like they were giving them when they would come back, like they were giving them some sort of antidote or some sort of medicine, but
Mm-hmm.
really they were giving them a placebo and tracking their progression. And
Yeah.
so there are dark things that have happened out there, and
Mm-hmm.
that are happening out there. But then there are also good people who are trying to do good things. The hardest part is the discernment, and then also to
Ah.
not try to categorize every person as a bad guy just because of, you know, what they've done in the past or what knowledge they have.
Thank you, Hakeem. Yeah, that discernment has been my magic word for the last few months, and it's because everyone's looking at everyone else, wanting everyone else to tell them what's real and what's not, and we have to get back to learning how to discern for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And you said it at the very beginning of this show. sharpening your tools is the best way to do that, right? Psychologically and physically. And then I just wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify, because we talk about quote psyops on this show all the time, because Mike and I have this running joke that everything is a psyop, which is probably true to some degree or not. But what's the difference between what everyone's calling, like in the zeitgeist today, a psyop, which is what I look at as like sort of misinformation or disinformation, wherever it's come from, doesn't matter, versus what you were doing in the military, doing psychological operations, just really quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So there's the biggest challenge today when I'm listening to this is that there's no differentiator between what aspect of PSYOP you're working on.
Yes.
Let's say we have a basketball team, right?
Mhm.
So we all play basketball, but what job what do you do as a basketball player? Are you a point guard? Are you a defense person? Are you like what position are you playing? So then it's the same thing, PSYOP, big overarching term. Our the way we describe PSYOP and the definition is to persuade, change, and influence the hearts and minds of a foreign target audience. So foreign being the thing, but obviously it gets used on domestic soil as well. And so then it's like, okay, well, what type of PSYOP is it? Is it information, meaning that, hey, we just want to put out information that this thing is happening, and that's just information, right? It's what we call white PSYOP. It's pure, true information. Hey, man, if you go down there, that's where a gang leader lives, and he'll shoot you in the face because that's what they do. Okay, I'm not giving you anything, that's not true. That's actual true. Then there's misinformation, then there's disinformation, and then there's malinformation. So PSYOP has those four branches, right? And then or those four ways that it can manifest or be put out into the world. And then there are different tiers. So there's white PSYOP, gray PSYOP, and black PSYOP, right? So then you have like a white PSYOP, which means that you know exactly where it's coming from. The person putting it out, you feel like their intentions are good. I know. Then there's gray PSYOP. You kind of put it out there and you kind of muddy the water, so people don't know exactly where it's coming from, and it could be a little good with a little bit of misinformation in there or something of that nature, or malinformation. And then there's black PSYOP, which is just totally like I'm doing something to you, but I'm making it look like somebody else did it to you, right? So it's like this false flag, or all of these things kind of fall under that,
Yeah, and sometimes it can be in a very micro situation, like a small village, or sometimes it could be like there's psychological operations against. It just makes me think of like even the Aztecs used to blow these terrifying whistles like in the middle of the night. They would scare the shit out of you. That's a PSYOP. But it's also a PSYOP, for the U.S. government to like pretend that there was a global war on terror or something. You know what I mean? Like, so there's different. I just wanted to differentiate. We're getting close to our allotted time. I really, because this is the first time I ever saw you without realizing it. How was your Naked and Afraid experience? You seemed like you did the show twice, right?
Yeah. And I've done other shows too. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell us, how you got into that, and like how fun was that for you or not?
Yeah. So I did Naked and Afraid. A friend of mine, special forces buddy of mine, where we would meet at Starbucks all the time, or Barnes and Nobles, and we'd sit and we'd have like these long discussions about everything that was happening in the world. His view as a special forces, long-term special forces guys, my view as a PSYOP guy. And then, we would just talk about that. And then one day we were at this Barnes and Noble, and he says, "Hey, you do survival stuff. Have you seen the show called Naked and Afraid?" And I was like, "No." And he is a white guy, and so he's like, "I got a question for you." And he really was just trying to like push my buttons. And he was like, "Why don't more black people do stuff outside like this?" And I was like, and now you got these two kind of like fun alpha mentalities, and we were like, I was like, I can do that. I'll show you, So I was like, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna fill out an application tomorrow. And so I did that. Actually, I went home, I filled out this application, and I was like, this will be fun. And And I would come back and I'll tell him like, hey, I tried, it didn't work out. And it actually did. They end up calling me back, and I was like, oh man, I'm in it now. So it started off as just this fun, friendly competition, where a friend gave me like this challenge, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went after it. And then it turned into this life-changing event. So I end
Mm.
up, oddly of all places, in the Himalayan mountains in India.
Yep.
And I'm naked at night. It's upwards of just like, or the temperature is like 32 to 34 degrees. In the day, the temperature is like 60 to 65 degrees. Um, and we're totally naked, me and one woman. And the idea behind the show is the story of Adam and
Adam and
Eve.
Eve. Yeah.
If a woman, one man, one woman are out there in the world, how would they survive? How would they figure it out? And then the camera people are just watching that. And for me, what I had a bunch of awakenings when you strip yourself of everything, um, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. Oddly enough, where my ninja tradition came was from India, as a lot of different martial arts traditions. Now I'm out there in this original place, this birthing ground for the philosophies that would eventually become the ninja philosophies. Um, and I'm void of everything, of all of these distractions. And then
Mm.
I first had this encounter or this understanding that I actually was dealing with PTSD,
Mm.
and had not been aware, or maybe I was aware of it on some level, but I wasn't accepting of it, because as a
Mm.
special operator, one of the things you do is you compartmentalize real well.
Yep.
And then you fill those voids, or you fill that that conscious awareness, that deep conscious awareness, with overt conscious awareness, which you just keep putting new things into that space to keep your mind busy, right? You just keep
Mm-hmm.
filling it with different mission sets. And
Yeah.
so now I'm out there, and I don't have all of these distractions, and I don't have all these things I can do other than drink water, find food, and collect firewood. And when you're just hobbling around collecting firewood that's going to last you 13 hours through the night, and that's all you're doing all day, it's like this slow meditative process where you
Mm-hmm.
just start thinking about everything that you've been going through, and next thing you know, this wide awakening happens. This
Mm.
aperture opens up, and you figure out who you truly are. And that was
Mm.
really the greatest lesson that I got from Naked and Afraid. It was so powerful. It was so awakening. And it started me off on this journey, really.
Dude, I identify with that a lot. But for for me, I also live with PTSD, and from my time in the military, and what I would do was, like, I was very successful for a long time, but what I would do was I would exercise, train martial arts, running, lift weights, that kind of thing. And then in a different scenario, I had that taken away from me, all the stuff that kept me busy. It was an
Mm,
injury. And
mm,
then similarly, I had to like think my way out of that, and it took a long time. And that's kind
mm,
of how it led to starting the podcast and me getting into coaching basketball. But the point is when when you can't run away from your demons or distract yourself from them, they'll show up. And but if you're ready for it, it's a good time to face it. So I. I don't remember the exact episode because we're talking like years ago, but I'm sure I saw it. Like what's the time frame? It's a certain amount of days you're supposed to survive. Did you make it
tw-
all the way? How did that
yeah.
go?
So the first time was 21 days, and I made
Uh-huh.
it all the way. The second time was 40 days, and I
Uh-huh.
actually made it a week. And then I had to leave. I tapped out. So that was basically that was the two experience. One was in the Himalayan mountains in
Mm-hmm.
India, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one was in the Colombian jungle.
Okay. What was it, an injury, or were you just ready psychologically tapped out, or what happened at it was
Yeah,
the
it was.
extra large, it's called?
Yeah, XL, yeah. And so that one, they said that we couldn't find water, but we had water. So the true story is that my electrolytes and my potassium had fallen to
Ah,
crazy levels.
yeah.
So I was getting these massive body cramps.
Yep.
And once I recognized the onset of that, as a medic, I was like, wait a minute, I'm drinking a ton of water,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I'm still getting these massive body cramps. I think my electrolytes. And then I started thinking, like, what can I do or eat or to get my electrolytes back up? And there was nothing that I could find and that was going to get it to a place where I was going to stop having these cramps anytime soon. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, yeah, I'm not playing this game anymore. I gotta tap out because I got a real life, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have people where that is their life. That's the one time in their life that they feel important. They're doing it for other reasons, and I'm cool with that. But that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't me. I
Mm-hmm.
had a school, I had books that
Right.
I've written, I had other things going on in my life, and so this was like a small portion of what it meant to actually be living a real life, and I was like, I'm not going to take the chance of getting irreversible damage for something that's just, me being on television, so that was why I left that particular show. And I got
Yeah.
back and I went to the doctor, and the doctor, my potassium levels, even after several days, my potassium levels were still super low. And he was like, "Good thing you left. You did the right call because I don't foresee as a doctor that you would have been able to raise your potassium levels back up to where you were going to need so that your heart didn't stop." Like he was pretty dreary about it. So it's like,
Yeah. You're like, I guess I made the right call, right?
yeah.
Yeah, man. Something you posted on Facebook, if you even remember this, like 3 months ago, was I found very inspiring to me. You went back to school recently, didn't you? You got like I forget. You're going back to school, right? Or you finished or something. I was trying to find the post earlier, but I remember looking. I go, man, this guy does all kinds of different shit. He's in school right now. What's going on here?
Yeah, I went to school for integrative health medicine with a
Yeah, that was
focus
it.
on with a focus on herbal medicine, and
Got
so
it.
I got a degree in that, and that was to heal me from my back issues that I had suffered while I was in service,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
the VA was doing the best that it could, but it was really just giving me a lot of different medications, and those really I only needed one medication, which was to help me with my back pain, and then that turned into five other medications, so a total of six. Where now I'm taking all these medications, and five of those medications were because of side effects because of the
The other
medication
one.
before.
I know.
And I was like, this can't stand. I can't continue to do this for the rest of my life. I need to figure out what's the best way. So I started a 4-year yoga program,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started a 4-year, program with school for integrative health medicine. And through that, I've been
Mm.
able to manage and subdue to high degree my back pain. I still have every so often I'll have a twinge or something where maybe it feels
Couple
so
days.
off that I have to take like a Tylenol or Advil, but that's very rare compared to the fact that I was taking 800 milligram Moltrins almost
Whew.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I are walking a similar path, my friend, because I also deal with a back injury. I'm just starting down a journey of Tai Chi and
Mm,
Qigong with a teacher that I really vibe with. And it's been really the only thing that's helping. Like I said, like you said, the VA has helped to the best of its ability. I've explored other resources. I think like the best fit for me is going to be learning to slow things down, learning to connect my head to my body. That's I as anyone, if I'm an expert in anything, Akeem, it's identifying and treating PTSD in everyone else but myself.
mhm.
Um, and so
Yeah.
I'm learning to slow things down and whatnot, breathe. I used to I'd go out there and do like 100 pull-ups in like a half hour or something like that. And like I'm not doing anything. That's just one example of me being extreme about things. So I'm trying to take the opposite approach. But I really appreciate, the stories you shared here with us today, because, I appreciate people who have shared, their vulnerabilities on the show. Could, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to invite you on another time to talk. Maybe we could talk just veteran stuff in PTSD and do maybe PTSD awareness kind of thing. Would you be interested in something like
Oh,
that?
I would love that. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay. And so everyone, we're gonna link all your stuff down here, but I wanted to ask to close things. How was the Psy Games? It was the first one, right? And then what's the plans for the next one?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. So the side games was beyond my wildest dreams. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this thing came to me as a download and I kind of fought it for a while. Actually, I'm one chapter away from finishing a book that I've written called Phoenix of the Heart, which is about the whole journey of the side games, why
Mm-hmm.
it's important to mankind, why how it came to me, how I fought it, and I didn't want to do it because I was like, that's too big. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to get
Mm-hmm.
started in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
to where it is now. So we thought, or I thought, I was like, man, I don't know. It'd be great if I get like 300 people at this event, And we ended up with just over 600 people.
Mm.
And we had like about 40 to 50,
Wow.
50 kids there, which was absolutely fantastic. So
Yeah,
kids were
that's the
able
best
to
ones to have.
see,
Yeah.
yeah, because they're the next generation, right? We all talk
Well,
about how
they
we
don't
want
have
to
the
change the
layers of
world.
trauma blocking it, not to interrupt you, but they don't
Yes.
have all these layers of being an adult blocking
Yes, yes,
it.
yes. And then how do we change the future? Everybody's like, oh, we need to change the future. And then you go to all of these conferences and they are 99.9% old people,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I count myself in that category. I'm 48. So I'm like, I'm no spring chicken anymore. So it's like, you have all of these folks that are in their late 40s and above, and we're talking about how do we change the world? Well, the world is the next generation, and we're not offering anything for these kids to kind of really and they're the most pure, like you said. they're
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
they're they're your brand new MacBook coming off the shelf, and
Right.
now what you put on there is going to really determine how this MacBook is
Yeah.
going to be
It's
able to
like putting
perform.
Windows 95 on a new computer or something, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And so we need to explore and let these young folks give them a place to explore. So side games was great for that. Then it really opened people up. I mean, I just went to a mindsight class a couple weeks ago
Mm-hmm.
that Dahlia was there too. And
Uh-huh.
because of Dahlia's performance, she inspired so many people who had come to that class. They were like, I came here because I saw Dahlia at the side games and I was like, whoa, how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think it really is. People, scientists have been doing this from a research perspective, which I think is very important, but they haven't been doing it from an inspirational and motivational perspective. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just because you do a research paper that says psychokinesis is real, that doesn't inspire anybody out there to go and like actually try to do psychokinesis, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so then your research paper is really for your peers, and then your peers review it and they say, oh, okay, yeah, we see what you did here, that's great. And then it just dies on the vine. It's people like
Mm-hmm.
you and me and others who are out there spreading the word and who
That's what
give
I'm trying to
people
do.
that inspiration to actually say, oh, is this a real thing? Let me go and look at this. And then the motivation to actually make that a part of their lives. And that's really what we need to be doing. And the side games was the best way through play and games. That's how we get excited and motivated.
I
So
love it.
that's what the side games is. And so we go off of this basis of information, inspiration, and education. So information, we want to inform you as to like what remote viewing is. I think there's also a lack of knowledge. People have all these different words and they're making stuff up and they want to call one thing remote viewing even though it's not remote viewing, and then they teach classes and then a whole bunch of people start calling it this thing. So it's information. What is remote viewing? What's the history? We have all of the high level professionals who
Mm-hmm.
have been doing it, people who have been in remote viewing from the beginning when the Army created it,
Mm-hmm.
to teach you like this is what remote viewing is. Then we have the inspiration. The next day, which is Saturday, you get to see people compete and they have a good time and they're supporting each other and they're having fun, and now you're inspired. Oh my God, I didn't know that lady could do that. I didn't know people could do
Mm-hmm.
that. They could put a
Mm-hmm.
blindfold on and get these things all right and within a minute. And then you have, now that you're inspired, you're informed and you're inspired, you have educate. So the last day is workshops where you say, I need to learn how to start the process of learning remote viewing. So now you got a workshop on Sunday where you can actually go and actually start learning the basics of remote viewing and take that back. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
change the world. We want to
Mm-hmm.
inform people, we want to inspire people, and we want to
Mm-hmm.
educate people. and we want to do that across cross generational barriers. So we want to do it with our elders, we want to do it with the people in the middle age, and we want to do it with our young ones as well, primarily the young ones. So that's what we're doing with the side games. And that's, the side games actually has 3 branches to it. There's the event, then there's side games online, which we're actually in the process right now of renovating or reskinning, they call it. Like, we're making the games a lot more accessible and fun and so on and so forth. And then we have the side games training camps where we're going to do our first one next year, where you can come and actually train in these different modalities if you are looking to grow in these different modalities, and then also be able to possibly come and be one of our perceptualists, which is that's what we call the competitors. We call them perceptualists. If you want to be one of them, then we have these training programs that will help you get there. There are others, but we thought it would be great that if we had one that specifically taught you about the games and stuff that we're going to be playing at the side games.
Great, love it. And I love the idea of like games being the way to measure this sort of thing, because really you can measure a basketball player by how tall he is, how high he can jump, how fast he can run. And then there's Larry Bird all of a sudden, right? And he was tall, but he wasn't fast and he couldn't jump. I ball out a game and I'm a 5'6" white guy, all right, and I ball. I'm telling you, I ball out, all right, and so and so there's some things you can't measure, and so I like the idea, not in like a traditional way, like here's a ruler and a stick, or I'm gonna time you on that, right? And that's why Nikola Jokic, I don't know if you know who he is. He's super tall, but his stats aren't very measurable either. They don't make a lot of sense, and so it's I see what you're doing with the side games as like, it's like, let's bring these people from these different abilities. That you could relate this to the gladiator games as well, different sizes and strengths and abilities, and let's bring them together and see what happens. But you're doing it in a fun, like, not war-based community type way, which is even cooler. And so where can people find like you? Like, how do we direct traffic towards you, Hakim?
Yeah, so that's beautiful. So I'd say the first way to do that is the sidegamesinternational.com. So sidegamesinternational.com. That would be number 1. And that will bring you to the side games and all the stuff there. If you want to find me directly, there are 2 websites to find me. One is Hakim, Hakim Isler, ISLER.com. And the other one is Greater Potentials, greater-potentials, plural.com. And those would be the ways to best reach me.
Fantastic. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I swear I can do the mind seeing ever since I was a kid. I didn't know it was like an extrasensory perception. I do it all the time. It's not in any sort of precise sort of way or anything. It's just something that happens in my brain. So what if, and I'll cut this out if you say no, but can Mike and I come and cover the next event, like especially the learning one, because Mike is very much into remote viewing and stuff like that. We'll cover the event, we'll promote it for you, and we'll come try out our abilities.
Yeah. So our first event actually will be around March, and it's going to be a psychokinesis class. So you definitely can come to that. It's going to be a good time. And psychokinesis is your ability to interact with matter with your mind. Or energy. That's what psychokinesis is versus telekinesis. It's specifically mind matter interaction, where psychokinesis is mind whatever interaction. It could be energy, it could be matter, all these different modalities. So yeah, you're more than welcome.
We'll come to one of them. And just to clarify for anyone listening, it's not like I can't, if you hold up an apple 5 feet away from me, I may not be able to tell you it's an apple, but I see with my eyes closed all the time. So
yeah.
Hey, Hakim, thank you so much for joining the Multiverse, man. It's been a real pleasure for me, and hopefully we can get you back again because I really enjoyed our discussion.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to end stream.
Subscribe to Mike and Dave's Multiverse on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble today.